I'm telling you, I take the sweepstakes and Trump despisement. I mean, really, I would even go so far as to say he disgusted me. But I didn't know the man. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know his story. I just knew the caricature. And for me, that was bad enough. And then you have his children. You have his grandchildren. To me, the family and children are, they say in a court of law, they use a phrase called, that's dispositive. That's proof beyond a reason.
Welcome to the Revo Report. We're inspiring faith with reason and reason with faith.
Reasonable doubt. So that alone tells me this man has more character than I gave him credit for. There's something about this guy. He's bizarre. He's a strange dude. Very successful. All very successful people are, right? They're different. But there's just something about him that people like him who know him. You know, the people he worked with. He's being a builder. He knows average people. He's for average people, right? And those Christians are, I don't want to call them pharisaical and self-righteous, but maybe they are. Maybe they think they know something about the man because of a caricature, you know, and the fact that he says things she says, you got to know when to take Trump seriously, not literally, not seriously, right? He says things to get, it's the art of the deal, to get a reaction, right? And like Trump Gaza, I don't know if you saw that video. My daughter, who's had taken a long time to come to anything positive about Trump, but she's still on board. But still, it's like, she's like, oh, did you see that's horrible? I said, that's just perfect Trump troll. I mean, it's perfect. Would you rather have, you know, this dystopian nightmare of death and destruction everywhere, or Trump Gaza? I mean, but
even Canada, right? Just riling up Canada and saying, our Governor Trudeau in the 51st state.
Yeah, and it's just to make points. It's the art of the deal. So you can say whatever you want about it, but it's so effective. And when you talk about polarizing, isn't it interesting that the polls are moving continually further to the right? You know, speaking conservatively, MAGA, Trump. Because last night, right, it was like 70+% approval of his speech.
Really?
That's a CBS poll, yes. CBS poll.
Wow.
You know, and you start seeing things, because the worst nightmare for the Democrats and the left and the never Trump Christians is that what Trump is doing is going to work. It's actually going to work. It's going to bring peace and prosperity, right? And undeniably, there is a Christian move. Whatever you say about his faith, he is totally affirmative about the faith. Whereas Biden and the Democrats are Marxists, and they hate Christianity. They just do. It's their enemy. And Trump is all for America. Red, white, and blue, apple pie, just average folks trying to make a living, you know. And so you've heard the phrase Big Eva, or the evangelical establishment. Have you? No,
I'm not familiar with that.
Right. Well, there's just like Christianity Today is a good example. Wheaton College. There are these basic publishing houses.
Like Big Pharma? Is that? But
that's the slam, right? Tim Keller was, you know, one of those. I learned a ton from him and loved his work. But after Trump, he just started to third wayism. I talk about that in the book too. Is that, you know, it's the extremes of the left and the right, and we don't want to be on the extremes. There's no extreme right. It doesn't exist. You know, it's a bogeyman. All the extremes are on the left, all of them. And because they're Marxist, they're anti-God. They're anti-everything we believe about truth, goodness, love.
So, Mike, maybe other people haven't heard of it. What exactly is Big Eva?
It's just the evangelical establishment, the Gospel Coalition. So that was a website that Piper and Keller put together, like early teens probably. And I used to go to that website all the time. And they just became increasingly kind of anti-Trump, increasingly kind of liberal-ish in their theology.
Oh, really? Even in their theology?
Oh, well, yeah. Especially like for men and women in ministry. Some of them would go as far as to say women can be pastors and so on, and elders. But it just became more and more kind of squishy. They don't like the culture wars. In fact, you'll hear some of these Christians say, if a pastor of a church we used to go to, a great church, I mean, theologically solid as a rock, but he said, and this is a quote from a sermon, you know, if you're involved in the culture wars, you're basically rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And I almost threw my Bible at, you know, Christianity is a culture war. Come on, man. But Big Eva is just trying to always find a third way between left and right, and they don't want to be offensive, and they're just becoming irrelevant. And Keller just is the biggest name was, and again, I learned a tremendous amount from the man, and you know where he is right now with Jesus, but they have had TDS very bad, Trump derangement syndrome, just losing their clout with average
I think
Christian.
for a long time, the church was afraid of being offensive, and the gospel is offensive. I think they stopped speaking the truth and tried to walk that middle ground without realizing that we're actually more ashamed of Jesus than speaking his truth and declare we're ashamed of the gospel if we're not going to preach the whole gospel, and we're going to stay in this middle ground because that's what was politically correct for so long. And when Trump comes out and all of a sudden he is the opposite of political correction, I think all of a sudden people started saying, hey, we can actually say that and not get canceled. And the media, of course, mainstream media did try to cancel Trump and everybody else who was being politically incorrect. And I think a lot of people waking up now to see, hey, actually, we can speak the truth. Actually, we don't have to be ashamed of the gospel. We can stand up for babies being killed, and we can stand up for marriage, and we can stand up against all this woke propaganda. And it's okay to do that in America right now. Is that accurate, would you say?
It is, and it needs to be more. I mean, when we went to a church in Illinois, and the only time homosexuality was brought up was during the run-up to Obergefell and the redefinition of marriage. And, and it was like, oh, we're all sinners too. It's like, well, really, would you say that about anything else? But because you don't want to offend whoever would be offended by saying homosexuality is sin and evil, an abomination, unnatural, which is what the Bible says, right? And I heard this recently, I forget who, maybe it was Doug Wilson, the difference between co-belligerents and allies. So we were a co-belligerent, we're in war with Stalin against Hitler, one of the worst mass murderers in history, but we're on the same side, right? An ally, they wouldn't be an ally, of course, right? But we are allies with Britain, right? With France, because we're on the same side. We have all the same goals. So in the culture wars and in government wars, whatever you want to say, we have co-belligerents. Like Trump he's not a religious conservative, social conservative, as we would call it. He's way more friendly to the LGBT whatever than I think we should be. But that's okay, right? And we understand that. And this is just the first step in a very long process of re-Christianizing the culture. And so we're going to do things with people we may not agree with. They're co-belligerents. And especially across any Christian of any stripe, conservative side, whatever their theology is, we're in this together. We're allies together. And we need to really fight with them.